Hi, this is Áine Tyrrell with John Broughton on Retrospectives, KC Radio 97.7 FM.
Well, let's jump right in. What a wonderful thing crowdfunding is. I want to talk about that aspect of the album first, if we could. It's become a wonderful thing for independent artists like yourself. When you set up the Possible campaign for the album, were you confident that you'd reach your target?
No, not confident at all. But I thought it'd be one way to try. And if that didn't work, I was like, oh, I'll try a different way. But then when I got halfway into it, I was like, oh, I'm not going through all of this again. I'm going to have to give this even a bigger, push, which ended up being really lovely because it's a thing that kind of made me think outside the box a bit more and just kind of realize that I didn't want to give the opportunity up, that this was a really powerful way of building a community, I suppose, of music listeners that were really into what I was doing as well.
What I like about it is that your supporters, your fans, they're doing more than just buying a CD in advance. They're developing a relationship with the album before it's even in their hands.
Yeah, it's really special to have that because I know for me, as I was going through the finishing process of the album, because we had recorded it in Ireland before I did the crowdfund, but the final mixing and the mastering and then everything that comes afterwards, so like the publicity, the pictures, the physical copy, everything that I was putting out after that, I was like, well, there's like 250 people that are already invested in this. This needs to be like the best of what I have, and I really felt all the time so committed to the people that were crowdfunding it. And it did mean actually that the first lot of CDs came back and I was like, you know what, no, that's not good enough, the printing. And I sent them back again, and it meant a delay, but it was actually just more, I felt that the people that were so invested in it along with me, I really needed to deliver something that I was as proud of as I would want them to be when they opened it up. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. You worked so hard to encourage contributions, as hard as I've seen anybody working in such a campaign. Myself, I was a lucky recipient of a tin whistle solo with hula hoop.
Thank you.
For my pledge, and I can only imagine when the whole thing was over, you must have felt a combination of relief and exhaustion.
Yeah, relief and exhaustion, and I actually had a newfound appreciation for social media. I knew it was a tool that I had to use as an independent artist. I mean, anyone that's doing anything creative these days have to have their stuff up online and all that sort of stuff. But I thought that social media was more of a thing that kind of took people away from people and kind of wasn't a gathering or a community sort of thing. And when I finished it, I was exhausted and I was exhilarated and all that sort of thing. But I think the thing that really came to me was just how powerful it is when people get together, and that it is possible to do that online now, and it is possible to kind of gather a beautiful community of people that continue to support what I do now. They're coming to shows and they're sending me pictures when they receive their CDs, and just all this like lovely stuff that is human connection, one-to-one, that and in a group that you sometimes lose in the everyday life now because everyone's so busy and we're all connected to our mobile phones in ways that kind of distract us and everything. And it was just a really lovely, affirming way to see the power and the good use of social media to bring people together.
For sure, yeah. You also had some assistance from Creative Victoria. Tell us about their involvement and what the process was going through to get that.
So I was based in Creative Victoria at the time, or based in Victoria. I'm up in New South Wales at the moment, so I don't stay anywhere for too long. But I applied based on the fact that my first album we had done on a road trip around Australia in the desert, which I know you had us in to speak about when we recorded that, and thanks for that. And we did that on a road trip around Australia, mostly in the desert through South Australia. And Mark, my producer, and I had always had this idea what if we took the same formula and did it in Ireland, and went on a road trip around Ireland to record the second one. So the actual trip to Ireland and the recording, I had applied to Creative Victoria to help fund that. And and I suppose based on the success of the first one, they were happy to jump on board and see that project came to life, which was pretty incredible because, it gave the start to the project, which was about 2.5 years ago now.
So logistically, how did it compare doing this process around Ireland, where a country that you know well, rather than back here in Australia, where I guess at the time you were still getting to know the country?
Yeah, it was really different. Well, obviously the desert is very different to Ireland, which is lush and green and raining all the time. So there, and the desert was more, we set off and we didn't have a start point and an end point. And we did it in 10 days, or nearly 2 weeks. And we started and we just drove, basically. And it was kind of what would come next every day, we didn't know. Whereas Ireland, we went over, and I was also touring an EP. I was there to visit family. There was all this other stuff going on. So I set aside 2 months we were over there. And Mark came, my producer, came for about 6 weeks of that. And in that time, we had places that we really wanted to go, like the Aran Islands, which are off the west coast of Ireland. We wanted to get down to Dingle to record in this amazing church. And then we had lots of other friends that kind of were offering places and telling us to go here, there, and all these different places. And so we had this incredible amount of support from family and friends over there, which in the desert we were meeting strangers in Australia, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But it was really similar, that sort of the attitude out in the outback where, you kind of roll into town in this big bus and they're like, what are you doing here? And they're just so excited about the project. We kind of had the same thing when we rolled into places in Ireland. They're like, you're recording an album while driving around? You're mad. So, a lot of people, the same sort of thing where they were just like, here, have this, the front lounge room for a while, or do this, or so the attitude of the people, I would say, would have been very the same, but the length of time we took to do it was different. And then obviously we had a lot of musicians and friends along the way that collaborated with us that we didn't have out in the desert.
Some wonderful locations. I believe one track recorded in the house that you were born in. That must have been a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible actually, because we didn't have that one planned. That one we were actually down in Clare at my dad's house where he lives now, which isn't the house that I was born in now, and but it's not too far. And we were looking for a piano, and his piano was out of tune. And so we were calling around asking different musicians about places, and then it's just someone had suggested, why don't you ring the research station, which with this UCG, one of the colleges there had a research station out in the Burn, which is because it's a geological sort of wonder of the world, really. And my dad was a caretaker there when I was born. So I rang them up and find out who had the keys, and we kind of had to sneak in because there was a group coming in the next day, and we just got really lucky. But it was that we were looking for something completely different, and someone suggested to go there, which I never would have thought of, and it was just pretty incredible.
So did you earmark certain locations for particular songs, or was it just really how the mood took you at the time?
No, actually, because a lot of the songs, we went over with a lot of unformed songs this time, whereas when I went out to the desert, I had, 13 or 14 songs and was like, okay, here's what I'm offering to the album. And the ones that really struck me and sort of were quite amazing were the ones that popped up as we went along, or they changed as we went along the road trip. So Mark and I were both really open to that idea with this album. And it was more that we went with a mandate of what we wanted the themes of the album to be, and what we wanted people to finish the album feeling, and those sorts of things, rather than the exact songs. And then it was when we were in certain places, just feeling into which song wanted to be finished in those places. So it was a lot of sort of formed but not finished songs. And then we kind of let the locations and where we were decide at the time how we were going to finish them.
Yeah. Did you see your homeland differently as someone going back who has now made their home in another country?
Yeah, definitely, actually. I think what I saw, which has come out, I suppose, in the themes of the album, is that we have the same struggles, each side of the world and every corner of the world. We're all going through a lot of the same stuff. We're all fighting against the same, greed and power and news corporations and all this sort of stuff. I saw how all our local radios in Ireland have slowly been bought out by Murdoch, and lots of changes within Ireland that I suppose, having been over here for quite some time, you could romanticize that Ireland was different here, do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But then having gone back, I'm like, wow, it's actually really similar. We're all going through a lot of the same human struggles in each country, and we're all dealing with it in different ways, but it's a lot of the same stuff. So I suppose I went back to Ireland thinking it was going to feel really different, where in fact it felt really similar to here, just different landscape, obviously different weather patterns.
Yeah.
But the one thing that really struck me and was so beautiful to come home to was that really strong sense of culture and music, and I suppose being on the land where you're from makes I just felt home, whereas here I always feel like I'm on somebody else's land, which I am,
Yeah.
So yeah, to go home and be met by that culture, and just music is everywhere in Ireland. I mean, it's all around you, and that's a lovely feeling to go back to, especially when we were recording music.
For sure. How different do you think the end product would have sounded had it been recorded here in Australia?
Yeah, well, I think going back to Ireland in terms of my writing was really, it made me dig a lot deeper. Mm-hmm. Just by the people who were involved in the project, working with Glenn Hansard and Liam Whaley and Declan O'Rourke, and being around my dad and all these other people who I really respect their songwriting and their advice, and in a very short period of time just being given all this advice as we're on the way recording, and then you soak all that in and you're like, oh, okay, and then you dig deeper and you work harder. It definitely came out in the songwriting. It definitely came out for Mark and I in the production, and what we were going to push it a bit further out of the bounds of everything else that we had done before. And I think that came from, being in Ireland, being not in Australia, then coming back to Australia to finish it, and not being in Ireland. All these sort of like the feeling like the piece of work doesn't fit in Ireland, doesn't fit in Australia, it doesn't fit anywhere. It kind of gave it its own little box to fit in, and then we could just do whatever we wanted with it. Whereas I feel if I had stayed in Ireland and had to release it there and do everything there, I might have stuck to the conformities of something that I thought the music industry in Ireland wanted, and vice versa, the same thing for Australia. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
You kind of get trapped in that way of thinking, whereas because we were kind of in between countries and doing whatever we wanted, wherever we wanted, it was like, okay, we're going to create our own little island right here in the studio, and it's going to be free from all that, and all we're going to do is do the best for the song on every, really serve the song on every occasion. And so it made for a massive sense of freedom on the album, I suppose.
So do you think this way of recording has become your thing now? Do you ever see yourself recording in the traditional in-studio way?
I don't think so, actually. It's just, it comes with its challenges, I mean, and it comes with probably a lot more expenditure that you don't, it takes a lot longer, so therefore you're spending more money. But, folk music, which you could call my genre, is music of the people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And being amongst on the road and interacting with people and being part of whatever time, space and place you are in history at that exact point of time, really drove the project. You know, it influenced me, inspired me, you know, brought me to my knees, made me celebrate all those things that you want in a project, that is then being delivered to other humans, because you want them to connect to it, you know. And I feel, for me, if I shoved myself into a studio, which is taking yourself away from people, except for the people you're working with, you know, and just delving too much into the art of it, I feel I'd lose my connection with, you know, what the music is for. You know, you don't. Of course, I write songs for myself, but I'd just sit in my bedroom and do that every day and not bother about dragging myself around the world to play music. So the fact that I write songs and perform them, it's because I want to perform them to other people. So yeah, I think for me that drives a lot of what I do. So I'm not sure that I could lock myself away to do that. Maybe to do, I don't know, some little side project at a time. It might be nice to feel what that feels like. But
yeah.
no, I think we shall continue in this vein.
That's good. You're on a roll.
Yeah.
Hey, tell us
So
about the
where's
work.
next, though?
Yeah. Tell us about the working partnership with Mark Stanley, what he brings to the table that makes him the right collaborator for you.
Oh, well, he's like a big brother, and, you know, you love them and you hate them at the same time. And I respect him so much in the music that's inside of him, his way of seeing things. Even with writing, you know, he pushed me so much harder on this album, whereas the first album, we were getting to know each other, you know, and then we did an EP in the middle, and that pushed the boundaries a bit. But we both kind of shook hands before this project and said, okay, we're going to come out friends at the end of this. It doesn't matter, but let's really push each other as far as we can. And when you have that freedom and that creative collaboration with someone, I mean, it's really powerful, because creating in solitude is great. You know, you can go about that whole time, but I find the magic is creating in partnership with people, and that collaboration and pushing each other and seeing where it can go. And sometimes him being right, and sometimes him being wrong, and sometimes me being right and me being wrong. But at the end, you know, what we did was serve the song each time and say, okay, let's go back to this. What's the song saying to us? What does it need us to do? Or what do we have to do to fulfill this message or this idea? And because we've worked together for so long, it was such an easy process this time, you know, really hard. There were like moments of, you know, everything as with everything, but the actual collaboration was so inspiring. And so, I mean, we both had loads of those goosebumps moments, and, you know, those times where we're like, wow, this is really powerful. And to come to the end of it now, where we're handing it out to people and people are buying it, and, you know, sending it to the possible crowdfunders, and people to feel the same feelings that we had intended when we recorded them, has been such a powerful experience. Yeah, and well beyond anything that I've experienced with other releases. And so that's really, I think it comes down to the collaboration between Mark and I, and what we set out and what we kept reminding each other of all the way through. You know, if either of us sort of lost a bit of faith or hope or any of that, we'd be like, come on, we got to do this, you know. and that you need that, because it's not an easy road independently releasing music in this time. So yeah, you need that. And so I feel incredibly lucky to have Mark as a partner in crime.
Yeah, for sure. The CD itself is beautifully packaged. It's a work of art with the folding map and all tied up in string. You don't do things by halves, that's for sure.
No.
Tell us about putting that together.
Oh, actually, I was talking to my mum about this only the other day, and I was like, Mom, what is my problem? Can I never just... And she goes, no, you never did. Yeah, well, I felt that in this day and age, music is so digital, like we stream music, we're on Spotify, we, are on iTunes or whatever. It's rare that we actually buy physical albums anymore. And I wanted the album to be a piece of art work on its own, with or without the CD in it, that someone would even be interested in buying a piece of artwork, even if they just wanted to stream the CD on Spotify, And I felt that for anyone to actually make that step towards buying an album now instead of streaming it, you have a few people that are stalwarts and won't stream anymore, but really most people are out there streaming at this stage. And so if anyone was going to go to the bother of actually buying a CD, I felt it just had to be something beautiful and that would fill their soul a little bit more than just a CD in a sleeve that, you can get done and everyone gets done. So I went on, a little vision in my head and thought that because the trip was a journey, that making a map would be lovely, and then went through the process of creating what you have in your hands now, which which took a lot of work, a few mistakes, a few print runs that weren't quite right. But in the end, when I hand that over to people and they have it in their hand and in front of me, the response has been unanimously the same. They're just like, wow, this is so special, and that's what I wanted, because CDs are, they're becoming extinct.
Yeah, that's right.
and I still love buying people's CDs and having their lyrics on them and all that sort of stuff, because I feel like it's a little touchstone to that artist in a way. And we shouldn't lose that completely. I do stream as well, so I'll put my hand up to doing both. But if something touches me or moves me, I always want to buy it, the physical, because it's something quite special. And I think, it for me, it was giving people something more than just a CD that's going to end up at the bottom of the car and get kicked around and thrown around and then thrown out eventually,
Yeah. Another lovely extra touch was having the kids read out the credits at the end of the album too.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was another sort of kick up the guts of the digital age, where you don't because we're not buying CDs anymore. We rarely see the credits or know who produced it or who played the bass on this track or what. All that stuff is getting lost now, and there's so many unsung heroes of music production where in the end, it's just my name that's on the front of the cover, but there are 30, 40, 50 people that went into making the album, and a lot of the times you don't hear about those people, and definitely not in the streaming age, because that gets lost completely. There's no details when you click on a track with any of that. So that was kind of a way to say, let's put a time, date, and a stamp on everything that happened here, and at least acknowledge all the contributors that made it happen. Even the possible crowdfunders, everyone that kind of made that happen. I tried to get into that little thing, yeah. And then it was great that the kids were willing to do it.
They did an awesome job. And just before I let you go on, you're in the middle of touring the album here at the moment. What's happening for the rest of the year?
Victoria is happening for the next 2 weekends. So I'm in Melbourne on Thursday and Friday. Thursday's at the Gasso with Claire Ann Taylor, another amazing release this year, Tasmanian singer-songwriter. And then Newport Bowling Club, and then to Drysdale in the Bellarine Peninsula, and then out near Ballarat at a place called Newlyn. And then the following weekend is down to Port Fairy and the Grampians, and back to the Caravan Music Club in Melbourne. And then I've got Sydney, Katoomba, and Newcastle to finish off the Australian tour. And then I'm heading overseas, actually, to do some festivals in the UK and Ireland. Yeah.
Wonderful. Busy times ahead.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting to have it finally finished and be out promoting it now, so it's pretty cool.
Well, congratulations on it, and thank you so much for taking time to catch up with us again today. I know you've been suffering from a sore throat. I was tuned into your virtual cup of tea last night, so I know you're battling, but I do appreciate it. And congratulations, it's just a wonderful piece of work. It was well worth the wait.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being part of the crowdfund. It was really special to have so many people from different parts of the world and the music industry be part of it. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure indeed. I'll let you get back on the road, Áine. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much, John.
All the best.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.